Call the police before they come back. Those words escaped the lips of a woman who had been in a coma for 6 weeks, and when she opened her eyes, I knew my life would never be the same again. My name is Sarah Miller. I am 59 years old, and this story began one morning in November 2024 when my daughter, Emily, rang my doorbell with a suitcase in hand and tears in her eyes. I was brewing coffee when I heard her voice. "Mom, I need to ask you a huge favor." Emily had always been my pride and joy, 32 years old, an attorney, married to Jason for 4 years, a marriage I had blessed with joy. Jason was an architect, well-educated, from a good family. His mother, Margaret, was a 68-year-old widow, the owner of a beautiful historic home in Evanston and 2 condos she rented out in Lincoln Park. "What happened, sweetie?" I asked as I poured her a cup. She sighed deeply. "It's Margaret. She had an accident 6 weeks ago. She fell down the stairs at her house. She's in a coma, Mom. The doctors say they don't know when she'll wake up, or if she ever will." I felt a lump in my throat. Margaret had always treated me with respect, even though we were never close. She was one of those mothers-in-law who kept a polite distance, but she was never cruel. "I'm so sorry, Emily." "How is Jason?" "Devastated," my daughter replied, wiping away her tears. "That's why I came to ask you this. Jason and I have to travel to London. It's urgent, a job opportunity we can't pass up, but we can't leave Margaret alone at the hospital. The nurse we hired quit yesterday. Mom, could you stay with her? It would only be for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I looked at my daughter. She had deep, dark circles under her eyes. Her marriage had gone through difficult times over the last year. Jason had lost a major project, and money had been a constant source of tension between them. "Of course, honey. You can count on me." Emily hugged me tightly. "Thanks, Mom. You don't know what this means to us." That afternoon, they took me to the hospital. It was a private facility, quiet, with white corridors that smelled of disinfectant and wilting flowers. Margaret's room was on the 3rd floor. When I entered, I saw her lying in that bed, connected to machines that emitted constant beeps. Her face was pale, her hands motionless on the sheets. She had a yellowish bruise on her right temple, and her gray hair was combed to one side. Emily handed me a list of instructions: nurse schedules, emergency numbers, doctor contacts. "Mom, call me for anything. We'll be in London, but our phones will always be on." Jason entered the room and greeted me with a tired smile. "Miss Miller, you don't know how much I appreciate this. My mother, she's all I have." There was something in his voice I couldn't decipher. Sadness, yes, but also something else, something I couldn't name at that moment. The next morning, I walked them to the hospital entrance. Emily hugged me one last time. "I love you, Mom. We'll be back in 2 weeks." I watched them get into the Uber. Emily was in the back seat looking out the window. Jason was in the front with his cell phone in hand. The car pulled away and disappeared down the avenue. I went back up to the 3rd floor. I entered Margaret's room. The machines continued beeping. The morning sun streamed through the window, illuminating her motionless face. I sat in the chair next to her bed. I took a rosary out of my purse and began to pray in a low voice. I am not an especially religious woman, but in moments like this, one seeks comfort wherever one can. 10 minutes passed, 15, 20, and then it happened. I heard a sound, a soft moan, almost imperceptible. I looked up. Margaret's fingers moved. I stood up immediately, my heart racing. "Margaret, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered slowly, very slowly, and then she opened her eyes. I stood paralyzed. Margaret looked directly at me. Her eyes were filled with fear. She moved her lips, trying to speak. I leaned over the bed. "Calm down, Margaret. You're in the hospital. You're safe." She shook her head. Her hand moved, searching for mine. When I took it, I felt her desperate grip, and then, with a hoarse, broken voice, she whispered, "Call the police before they come back." The air escaped my lungs. "What? What are you talking about, Margaret?" She squeezed my hand tighter. "They did this to me, Jason and Emily." I felt the world stop. "I don't understand. What are you saying?" Margaret closed her eyes as if every word cost her immense effort. "The tea. They put something in my tea. I felt dizzy. And then the stairs. I didn't fall, Sarah. They pushed me." Tears began to roll down her cheeks. "They want my house." My properties. They want me to die. My mind filled with images. Emily crying in my kitchen. Jason with that tired smile. The Uber disappearing down the avenue. Margaret opened her eyes again. She looked at me with an intensity that froze my blood. You'll be next, Sarah. If they know I woke up, you'll be next. I couldn't move. Margaret's words resonated in my head like warning bells. You'll be next. I stood there looking at her, trying to process what I had just heard. My daughter? My Emily? Capable of something like this? Margaret, I need you to explain everything to me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Are you sure of what you're saying? She nodded weakly. Her breathing was irregular, and I could see the effort it cost her to stay awake after 6 weeks in a coma. I have to rest, she murmured, but don't call the nurses yet. If they find out I woke up, they will know, and they will come back. Who will come back? Emily and Jason are in London. Margaret. She closed her eyes. That's what everyone thinks, she whispered, but don't trust anything they told you. Before I could respond, Margaret fell asleep again. Her breathing became deeper, more regular. The machines continued beeping normally. I sat back down in the chair, my legs trembling. I took out my cell phone and looked at the screen. It was 10:15 inches the morning. Emily had sent me a message 2 hours earlier. We're at the airport, Mom. I'll text you when we get to London. Love you. London. Or was it a lie? I put the phone away. I needed to think. I needed to remember. Because if what Margaret said was true, then everything I believed about my daughter was an illusion. Emily was born in May of 1992, on a rainy Thursday I will never forget. I was 27, a nurse at a public hospital, and her father, Robert, worked as an accountant for a construction company. From a young age, Emily was brilliant. She got the best grades. She read books her classmates didn't even understand. At 16, she won a state-level debate competition. I was so proud I cried at the ceremony. Robert died when Emily was 20. A massive heart attack while driving home. She was in her second semester of law school. I thought she would drop out, that the sadness would defeat her. But no, she became stronger. She finished her degree with honors. Mom, she told me on her graduation day, everything I am is thanks to you. I will never let you down. And I believed her. She met Jason in 2019 at a seminar on urban planning and real estate law. He was 30 years old, a newly licensed architect with a kind smile and impeccable manners. When she introduced him to me, I knew Emily loved him. Mom. He's different. He's smart, hardworking, and he makes me happy. I accepted him without reservation. Jason came from a good family. His father had been a civil engineer, deceased years prior. His mother, Margaret, was an elegant woman of few words, but respectable. The wedding was in March 2021, a small ceremony in a botanical garden. Emily wore a simple ivory dress. Jason cried with emotion as he said his vows. Margaret sat in the front row with a silk shawl over her shoulders, observing everything with a serene expression. After the wedding, we visited Margaret's house in Evanston. It was an antique 2-story Victorian home with a backyard full of oak trees and manicured hedges. The wooden stairs creaked underfoot. On the walls were old photographs of Jason's family, his father in his youth, his paternal grandmother, his great-grandfather in military uniform. This house is over 100 years old, Margaret explained as she served me brewed coffee in porcelain cups. It belonged to my mother-in-law, and before her, to her mother. Someday, it will be Jason's. It's the only thing I can leave him. I remember thinking, my daughter is so lucky. A family with roots, with history. The first 2 years of marriage were good. Emily opened a small law practice. Jason got sporadic projects. They didn't have money to burn, but they weren't struggling either. But in 2023, something changed. Jason lost an important project, a luxury apartment tower he was going to design in the Loop. The developer declared bankruptcy before breaking ground, and Jason lost months of work without getting paid a single cent. The arguments began. I heard them when I went to visit. Raised voices behind the bedroom door, uncomfortable silences during dinner. One day, Emily arrived at my house with red eyes. Mom, Jason is desperate. He says his mother won't help him, that she has 2 rental properties in Lincoln Park and won't lend him a dime. Maybe Margaret has her reasons, honey. Reasons? She has $8,000 a month coming in from rent and lives alone in that huge house. Why won't she help us? We're her family. It was the first time I saw resentment in my daughter's eyes. In April 2024, things got worse. Jason couldn't find work. Emily had to close her practice because she didn't have enough clients. They temporarily moved into a smaller apartment to save money. And then, in September 2024, Margaret's accident happened. Emily called me crying. "Mom, Margaret fell down the stairs. She's in a coma. The doctors don't know if she's going to wake up." I went to the hospital that same day. Margaret was unconscious, with a severe blow to the head. Jason was sitting next to her with a vacant stare. "It was an accident," he told me. I wasn't home. I arrived and found her at the bottom of the stairs. Emily cried endlessly. "What if she dies, Mom? What if she never wakes up?" I hugged them both. At that moment, I only saw a family destroyed by pain. Now, sitting in that hospital chair, watching Margaret sleep, I wondered at what point I lost sight of the truth. Sometimes we trust too much in those we shouldn't. Margaret opened her eyes again. She looked at me with urgency. "Sarah, I need you to look for something." "What is it?" "In my house, in the drawer of my nightstand, there is a blue notebook. Everything is there. The dates, the names, the conversations I heard, everything they planned. Margaret, if I go to your house and they find out, I need you to do it before they return from London, if they actually went, if they ever even left." Her voice cracked. "Sarah, I was a fool." I heard them talking. 3 months ago, I was in my room and they were in the living room. They thought I was asleep, but I heard everything. I heard how they planned to keep my properties, how they needed me to die soon because they had debts they couldn't pay. Tears fell down her face again. And I did nothing because they were my son and my daughter-in-law, because I thought maybe I had heard wrong. Why? Because I didn't want to believe that my own son could wish me dead. I took her hand. "Margaret, I'm going to help you. I promise." She nodded, closing her eyes again. "Be careful, Sarah. If they discover I woke up, I don't know what they are capable of." I left the hospital at 2 p.m. The November sun fell over Chicago with that golden light that makes everything seem calmer than it really is. But I wasn't calm. I walked to the bus stop with Margaret's words engraved in my mind. In the drawer of my nightstand, a blue notebook. I had to make a decision. I could ignore everything Margaret had told me. I could think the coma had confused her, that her memories were distorted. I could wait for Emily to return from London and ask her directly. Or I could look for that notebook. I took the L train toward Evanston. The trip took 40 minutes. I sat by the window watching the streets pass by, the shops, the people walking without knowing that my world was crumbling. I arrived at Margaret's house shortly after 3. It was an antique construction with a brick facade, a carved wooden door, and a huge bay window. The front yard had a large maple tree that had dropped its red leaves all over the path. I took out the key Emily had given me. "In case you need anything from the house while we take care of Margaret," she had said. I opened the door. The air inside smelled closed up, like old wood, like silence. I turned on the foyer light. Everything was in order, too much in order. I walked up the stairs slowly. Every step creaked under my feet. I reached the second floor. There were 3 doors. The middle one was Margaret's room. I entered. It was a spacious room with a wrought iron bed covered by a white cotton quilt. On the walls were framed photographs. Jason as a child. Jason at his graduation. Jason on his wedding day with Emily. On the nightstand, there was a rosary made of wooden beads and an unlit white candle. I approached the nightstand. I opened the top drawer. Inside were folded handkerchiefs, a bottle of lavender-scented lotion, an envelope with old receipts. Nothing else. I opened the second drawer. It was empty. I felt a knot in my stomach. What if someone had already taken the notebook? What if Jason and Emily had found it before the accident? I opened the third drawer, and there it was. A hardcover notebook, navy blue, with worn corners. I took it out with trembling hands and opened it. Margaret's handwriting was small, slanted, meticulous. The first page had a date, the 15th of August 2024. I read, "Today I heard something I shouldn't have heard. Jason and Emily were in the living room. I had gone down for a glass of water. I stopped on the stairs because I heard my son's voice, agitated. We can't go on like this, Emily. We owe $250,000. The bank is going to foreclose on the apartment. Your mother has 2 properties in Lincoln Park. Why doesn't she just sign them over to you now? I already asked her. She said no, that those properties are her only income. Income? She lives alone in this huge house. What more does she need? There was a silence. Then I heard Emily's voice, lower, colder. Jason, if your mother isn't going to help us, maybe we should think about other options. What options? She's already 68. She's not going to live forever. I felt the air escaping me. I stood paralyzed on the stairs, not daring to move. Emily, what are you saying? I'm saying that if something happened to her, you would inherit everything. The house, the condos, the rents. We could get out of this nightmare. I didn't want to keep listening. I went back up to my room in silence and cried. I closed the notebook. I felt my hands shaking. I continued reading. The 20th of August 2024. Today Emily came to visit me. She brought muffins and coffee. She was smiling. She asked me if I felt healthy. I told her yes, that I was perfectly fine. That's good, Margaret. It's important to take care of yourself at this age. Something in her tone made me feel uncomfortable, as if she were evaluating me, as if she were waiting for me to get sick. The 28th of August 2024. Jason called me on the phone. He asked if I had my will up to date. I told him yes, that everything was in order, that he was my sole heir. Perfect, Mom. Just wanted to make sure. When I hung up, I realized he hadn't asked how I was. He only cared about the will. The 10th of September 2024. Today was the day I knew I had to be careful. Emily and Jason came over for dinner. I made roast chicken with wild rice. We ate in the dining room. The conversation was polite, superficial. We talked about the weather, the news, nothing important. After dinner, Emily offered me tea. Let me make it, Margaret. You rest. I sat in the living room. She came back with a steaming cup. Chamomile tea, my favorite, drink it hot. It'll help you sleep better. I drank half of it. It had a slightly bitter taste, but I thought maybe it was the brand of tea. 10 minutes later, I felt dizzy, very dizzy. The room started spinning. Do you feel okay, Mom? Jason asked. A little dizzy. Maybe I should lie down. They helped me up the stairs. I remember my legs weren't responding well. I remember Jason holding my arm, but not with affection, with impatience. I lay down, closed my eyes, and heard their voices in the hallway. Do you think it was enough? Emily asked. I don't know. Maybe we should wait a little longer. We can't wait, Jason. The bank gives us until October. I fell asleep, or maybe I lost consciousness. I don't know. When I woke up, it was 4:00 inches the morning. I had a dry mouth and a terrible headache. I went down to the kitchen for water, and there, in the trash can, I saw the empty envelope. It was a white paper envelope with no label, but inside there were traces of white powder. I kept it. It's hidden in my closet inside a shoebox. It's my only proof. I felt a chill run down my spine. I kept reading with trembling hands. The 15th of September 2024. Today I woke up with fear. A fear I had never felt before. Fear of my own son. At what point did everything go wrong? At what point did the boy I raised, to whom I sang lullabies, whom I hugged when he had nightmares, turn into someone capable of wishing me dead? I don't know what to do. If I go to the police, will they believe me? I have no real proof, only an empty envelope and my suspicions. And if I'm wrong, if all this is a product of my imagination, I would destroy my family forever. But if I'm not wrong, then I am living with my own murderers. The last entry was dated the 20th of September 2024, 4 days before the accident. The 20th of September 2024. This will be my last entry. If something happens to me, I want there to be a record. Today Jason came to the house. He asked me to sign some papers. He said they were to renew the rental agreement for the properties in Lincoln Park. I told him I wanted my lawyer to review them first. He got upset. I had never seen him like that, so cold, so distant. Mom, don't you trust me? Of course I trust you, son, but these are important decisions. He left without saying goodbye. I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I asked him to come tomorrow to review those documents. I'm scared. I don't know why, but I'm scared. If something happens to me, let someone read this. Let someone know the truth. My name is Margaret Henderson. I am 68 years old, and I believe my son wants to kill me. I closed the notebook. I sat on Margaret's bed with the notebook between my hands, trying to breathe. Everything made sense now. Emily's insistence that I take care of Margaret, the trip to London right now, the urgency, the desperation. I looked around the room. Everything was in its place, too much in its place, as if someone had cleaned carefully, as if someone had erased the traces. I went down the stairs, went to the kitchen, opened the cabinets, looked for the envelope Margaret spoke of. It wasn't there. I looked in her bedroom closet, in the shoebox she mentioned. It wasn't there either. Someone had been here. Someone had cleaned up the evidence. I left the house with the notebook hidden in my purse. I locked the door. I walked quickly toward the avenue, and then my cell phone rang. It was Emily. "Mom, we just arrived in London. Everything good? How is Margaret?" I looked at the screen. I didn't know what to answer because now I knew the truth. My daughter wasn't in London for work, or if she was, it was part of a plan. And I was alone with a woman who had just woken up from a coma and with a notebook that could cost me my life. I didn't answer Emily's message immediately. I stood on the corner of Margaret Street with the phone in my hand, trying to control the tremor running through my body. "Mom, we just arrived in London. Everything good? How is Margaret?" I could imagine her on the other side. Maybe sitting in an airport cafe, or maybe at a hotel, or maybe nowhere. Maybe she was still in Chicago waiting for news. I took a deep breath and wrote, "Everything good, honey. Margaret is the same. Get some rest. Love you." I sent the message, put the phone away, and walked toward the train station with the blue notebook hidden deep in my purse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I arrived at my home past 7 p.m. I live alone since Robert died, in a small apartment in Rogers Park. 2 bedrooms, a modest living room, a kitchen where I still keep the mugs he gave me on our 10th anniversary. I made myself some herbal tea, sat on the sofa, took out the notebook again, and read it completely. Every word, every date, every detail. And then I started remembering things I had ignored. 3 months ago, in August 2024, Emily had come to visit me on a Saturday morning. She had deep circles under her eyes and restless hands. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "What's wrong, honey?" She poured herself coffee and sat in front of me. "Jason and I are going through a very difficult time. We have debts, Mom, a lot of debts." "How much do you owe?" "$250,000. I felt the air escape me. $250,000. It was a huge sum. "How did you end up owing so much?" "Jason invested in a project that didn't happen. We took out loans to stay afloat, and now the bank is pressuring us. If we don't pay in 2 months, they're going to take our apartment." I hugged her. "Honey, I wish I could help you, but you know my pension barely covers my expenses. I don't have that kind of money." She nodded. "I know, Mom. I'm not asking you for money. I just needed to vent." There was a silence. And then Emily said something that didn't seem important at the time, but now resonated with terrible weight. "Margaret could help us. She has 2 properties in Lincoln Park that bring in $8,000 a month. But when Jason asked her for a loan, she refused. Maybe Margaret has her reasons, Emily." "Reasons?" Her voice hardened. "What reasons can a 68-year-old woman have to hoard money she's never going to spend? What does she want it for? To take it to the grave?" Her tone surprised me. Emily had always been respectful, but in that moment, I saw something different in her eyes, something bitter, something resentful. "Honey, don't talk like that. Margaret has the right to do whatever she wants with her money." "I know," she replied, looking down. "You're right. Forgive me. I'm just very stressed." The conversation changed topics. We talked about other things, but when she left, I was left with a strange feeling in my chest. Now, sitting in my living room with the blue notebook in my hands, I understood that feeling. It was the first sign, the first fracture. The next day, I went back to the hospital. It was 8:00 inches the morning. I entered Margaret's room carefully, closing the door behind me. She was awake. She looked at me with alert eyes. "Did you find it?" she whispered. I nodded. I took the notebook out of my purse and showed it to her. "I read it all, Margaret, and I believe you." She closed her eyes as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for believing me. I sat next to her bed. Margaret, I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. What happened the day of the accident? She took a deep breath. It was September 24th, a Tuesday. Jason and Emily came over for dinner. I had made vegetable soup and roast chicken. We ate in the dining room. Everything seemed normal. We talked about work. The rentals. Unimportant things. She paused. After dinner, Emily offered me tea. Just like that time in August. She told me it was chamomile tea, that it would relax me. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. I didn't want them to think I distrusted them. Did you drink the tea? She nodded. Half a cup. And 10 minutes later I started feeling sick, dizzy, confused. I got up from the chair to go to the bathroom, but my legs weren't responding well. Jason helped me walk toward the stairs. Her voice broke. I thought he was going to help me go up, but when we got to the first step, I felt his hands on my back, and then he pushed me. Tears began to roll down her cheeks. I fell. I don't know how many steps I fell. I remember the pain in my head. I remember the blood, and I remember Emily's voice. Cold, calculating, saying, "It's done." I was left speechless. After that, everything went black. I woke up here 2 days ago, but I didn't say anything because I was afraid. Afraid they would come to finish what they started. I took her hand. Margaret, we have to call the police now. She shook her head. No, I still need proof. The notebook isn't enough. It's just my word against theirs, and I was in a coma for 6 weeks. They can say I'm confused, that my memories are distorted. But the envelope, the powder you found in the trash, it's gone. I looked for it when I wrote the last entry in the notebook. Someone had thrown it away. Or maybe they hid it better. And the documents Jason asked me to sign. I didn't sign them. My lawyer never got to review them. And after the accident, I suppose Jason got rid of them. I felt helpless. So what do we do? Margaret looked at me with determination. I need you to keep acting normally. Tell Emily that I'm still in a coma. Don't tell her anything about me waking up. If they think their plan worked, they'll let their guard down. And then we can act. Margaret, it's dangerous if they discover you woke up. That's why I need your help, Sarah. You are the only person I can trust. I nodded slowly. Okay, I'll do what you ask. But promise me we'll be careful. I promise. That afternoon, Emily called me via video chat. She and Jason appeared on the screen. They were in what looked like a hotel. I could see a bed behind them, beige curtains, a window with a view of buildings. Mom, how are you? How is everything going? I swallowed hard. Good, honey. Everything's fine. And Margaret? She's the same. The nurses say she's stable, but there haven't been any changes. I saw Jason and Emily exchange a look, a quick look, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. Are you eating well, Mom? Resting? Emily asked. Yes, honey, don't worry about me. I miss you, Mom. We love you so much. I love you too, I lied. When I hung up, I felt nauseous. That night I went back to Margaret's house. I needed to look for more evidence, something, anything. I went up to the second floor. I entered Jason's old room. It was a room he used when he stayed overnight at his mother's house. It had a twin bed, a small desk, a closet. I opened the closet, checked the desk drawers, and at the bottom of the last drawer, I found something. A manila envelope. Inside were legal documents. I read them with trembling hands. It was a power of attorney dated the 15th of September 2024. It gave Jason Henderson full powers over all properties of Margaret Henderson. But Margaret's signature was fake. I had seen her handwriting in the notebook, and that signature wasn't hers. They had forged it. I put the document in my purse, closed the drawer, left the house, and as I walked through the dark streets of Evanston, I knew there was no turning back. Because now I had the proof. And with that proof, I could destroy my own daughter. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room of my apartment with the fake power of attorney on the table, reading it over and over under the lamplight. I, Margaret Henderson, being of sound mind, grant full and sufficient power of attorney to my son Jason Henderson to administer, sell, mortgage, or dispose of my properties in any manner. The signature at the bottom of the document was a clumsy attempt to imitate Margaret's handwriting. I had seen her real signature in the blue notebook. They were completely different. I looked at the date of the document, the 15th of September 2024. 5 days before the accident. 9 days after Margaret wrote in her notebook that Jason had asked her to sign some papers and she had refused. Everything fit. Jason had forged the power of attorney, and when Margaret told him she wanted her lawyer to review the documents, he knew she would discover the fraud, so they decided to accelerate the plan. The tea, the stairs, the push, and 6 weeks of coma that were supposed to turn into death, but Margaret had survived. At 6:00 the morning, I made coffee, took a shower, dressed in comfortable clothes, put the power of attorney in my purse along with the blue notebook, and then made a decision. I called Mr. Thompson, Margaret's lawyer. His number was on the contact list Emily had given me. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hello? Mr. Thompson, good morning. This is Sarah Miller. I am Emily's mother, the daughter-in-law of Mrs. Margaret Henderson." "Ah, yes. Good morning, Miss Miller. How is Mrs. Henderson?" "She's still in the hospital, Mr. Thompson, but I need to speak with you. It's urgent." There was a pause. "What is this about?" "I prefer not to speak over the phone. Could we meet today? I have an opening this afternoon. Does 5 p.m. work?" "Perfect. Where is your office?" He gave me the address. Michigan Avenue, near the river. "I'll be there, Mr. Thompson. Thank you." I hung up. I had 11 hours ahead of me. 11 hours to think, to prepare, to decide if I was really going to betray my own daughter. I arrived at the hospital at 9 a.m. Margaret was awake, but upon hearing footsteps in the hallway, she closed her eyes immediately and lay still. A nurse entered, a young woman around 30 inches blue scrubs with a professional smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How is she this morning?" "Fine, thank you," I replied. The nurse checked the machines, wrote something on a tablet, and left. When the door closed, Margaret opened her eyes. "Every time I hear footsteps, I think it's them," she whispered, "that they're coming to finish what they started." I approached her bed. "Margaret, I found something last night. A power of attorney, dated September 15th with your signature forged." Her eyes widened. "Where did you find it?" "In the desk in Jason's room." "At your house." I knew it existed. Jason showed it to me that day when he asked me to sign it. I refused. I told him I wanted my lawyer to review it first. He got very angry, put the papers away, and left. "Well, apparently, he decided to forge your signature." Margaret closed her eyes. "My own son, my only son, the boy I raised alone after his father died. I gave him everything. I paid for his education. I bought him his first car. And this is how he repays me." Margaret. "Today I have an appointment with your lawyer, Mr. Thompson. I'm going to show him the power of attorney. He can help us." She nodded. "Be careful, Sarah. If Jason and Emily discover you're investigating—" "I know, but we can't stand by with our arms crossed." At 5 p.m., I arrived at Mr. Thompson's office. It was an old building with an elevator that chimed softly. His office was on the 14th floor. I knocked on the glass door. A receptionist let me in. Mr. Thompson was a man of about 65 with white hair and gold-rimmed glasses. He wore a gray suit and a navy blue tie. His desk was covered in folders and documents. "Miss Miller, please. Come in. Sit down." I sat across from him. "Mr. Thompson, before we begin, I need this to stay between us. Completely confidential." He nodded. "Of course. Everything you tell me is protected by attorney-client privilege." I took the power of attorney out of my purse and placed it on his desk. "I found this in Mrs. Margaret's house. I want you to review it." The lawyer took the document, read it attentively. His expression changed. He frowned. "Where did you say you found this?" "In Jason Henderson's room, Mrs. Margaret's son." "This signature is fake." "I know." He looked at me over his glasses. "Miss Miller, do you know what this means? This document gives Jason Henderson full powers over all his mother's properties. With this paper, he could sell the condos in Lincoln Park, mortgage the house in Evanston, drain the bank accounts, all without Mrs. Henderson's consent. And if the signature is fake, then it is a serious crime. Forgery, fraud, possible attempted theft. He could go to prison. I took a deep breath. "Mr. Thompson, there is something else you need to know." I took the blue notebook out of my purse. I handed it to him. "Mrs. Margaret kept a diary. Everything is in here. Her suspicions, the conversations she heard, the day they poisoned her with the tea. The lawyer opened the notebook, read in silence for several minutes. His face grew increasingly serious. When he finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. My God, this is terrible. I know. Mrs. Henderson is conscious? Can she testify? I hesitated. Margaret had asked me not to reveal she had woken up, but we needed legal help. Yes, she woke up 3 days ago, but no one knows, except me. She is afraid that Jason and Emily will try to kill her again if they discover she is conscious. The lawyer nodded slowly. I understand. Miss Miller, this is very delicate. We need to act very carefully. If what Mrs. Henderson says is true, we are talking about attempted murder. What can we do? First, I need to speak with her, hear her testimony directly. Then we must file a formal complaint with the district attorney's office. With the notebook, the fake power of attorney, and her testimony, we have sufficient grounds to launch an investigation, and if Jason and Emily flee, that's why we must act fast. Where are they now? They say they are in London. They left 3 days ago. The lawyer frowned. Do you have proof of that? Plane tickets? Hotel reservations? I don't know. I only know what they told me. Miss Miller, I'm going to ask you a favor. Get me any information you can about that trip. Dates, flights, hotels. I need to know if they are really in London or if it is a lie. I nodded. I will. And in the meantime, keep calm. Don't tell them anything. Act normally. If they suspect anything, they could disappear. I left Mr. Thompson's office with a huge weight on my chest. I walked down Michigan Avenue as the sun set behind the skyscrapers. The streets were full of people rushing to the train stations after work. Life went on as normal, but my life was no longer normal, because now I knew my daughter was an accomplice to an attempted murder. That night, I checked Emily's email. Not her physical phone, but her email account. Years ago, when she had trouble with her account, she had given me her password to help her recover some documents, and she had never changed it. I logged into her email, searched the inbox, sent folder, trash, and I found something. An email from Delta Airlines dated the 28th of October 2024. Confirmation of purchase. Flight DL8, Chicago, ORD, London, LHR. Departure November 5, 10:45 p.m. Passengers, Emily Miller, Jason Henderson. November 5th, 3 days ago. So yes, they had traveled to London. But then, why did Margaret say to be careful? Why did she insist I shouldn't trust anything? I kept searching and found another email from the same day. Virgin Atlantic. Confirmation of purchase. Flight VS 450, London LHR, Chicago ORD. Departure November 8, 10:30 p.m. Arrival November 9, 2:15 a.m. Passengers Emily Miller, Jason Henderson. I felt the air escape me. They had bought return tickets for November 9th. Today was November 7th. That meant they would return the day after tomorrow, way sooner than the 2 weeks they had told me. Why lie about the duration of the trip? And then I understood. They hadn't gone to London for work. They had gone to have an alibi, to be able to say they were far away when Margaret died. But Margaret hadn't died. She had woken up, and now they were coming back. I stood paralyzed in front of my computer screen looking at that flight confirmation. Arrival November 9, 2:15 a.m. The day after tomorrow in the early morning. I looked at the clock. It was 11 p.m. on November 7th. I had less than 30 hours left. I closed the laptop, paced around my living room trying to think clearly. I needed a plan. I needed to protect Margaret, and I needed definitive proof before Emily and Jason returned. I took my cell phone, dialed Mr. Thompson's number. He answered on the 5th ring with a sleepy voice. Hello, Mr. Thompson, it's Sarah Miller. Forgive me for calling so late, but it's urgent. Miss Miller? What's wrong? Emily and Jason are returning from London the day after tomorrow in the early morning. They lied about the length of the trip. They were only going to be there for 3 days. I heard the lawyer sit up. Are you sure? Completely. I saw their plane tickets in my daughter's email. Then we have to act now. Tomorrow morning. Can you bring Mrs. Henderson to my office? No, Mr. Thompson. She is still very weak. And if we take her out of the hospital, someone might see her. The nurses could tell Jason. Then I will go to the hospital tomorrow first thing. I need Mrs. Henderson to make a formal statement, and then we will go together to the district attorney. What if Emily and Jason find out? They won't find out. They are still in London, and by the time they return, we will have already filed the complaint. The police can detain them as soon as they step into the airport. I took a deep breath. Okay, Mr. Thompson. I'll see you tomorrow. I hung up. I couldn't sleep all night. I sat on the sofa watching the hours pass on the wall clock. At 5 a.m., I made coffee. At 6, I showered. At 7, I left for the hospital. I arrived at Margaret's room at 8. She was awake looking out the window. When she saw me enter, she turned her head. Good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Margaret. We have to talk. I told her everything. The plane tickets, the early return, the appointment with Mr. Thompson. Margaret listened in silence. When I finished, she closed her eyes. I knew they would come back. They need to make sure I'm dead. If they discover I'm still alive, they won't find out. Today we are going to file the report. Mr. Thompson is on his way. Sarah, are you sure about this? Once you file the report, there is no turning back. Your daughter could go to prison. I felt a knot in my throat. I know, but I can't let them kill you, and I can't let Emily continue down this path either. If I don't stop her now, what will she become? Margaret extended her hand. I took it. You are a very brave woman, Sarah, and a good mother, even if your daughter doesn't see it now. Mr. Thompson arrived at 10 a.m. He entered the room with a leather briefcase and a small recorder. Mrs. Henderson, good morning. I am Robert Thompson, your attorney. Do you remember me? Margaret nodded. Of course I remember you, Robert. You handled my husband's will and mine. Exactly. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to tell me everything that happened from the beginning. With as much detail as possible, I am going to record your statement to present it to the district attorney. Do you agree? Yes. The lawyer turned on the recorder and placed it on the nightstand. For the record, today is the 8th of November 2024. It is 10 a.m. My name is Robert Thompson, attorney at law. I am at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in room 305 with Mrs. Margaret Henderson. Mrs. Henderson, please state your full name and age. My name is Margaret Henderson. I am 68 years old. Mrs. Henderson, are you declaring voluntarily? Yes. Is anyone pressuring or threatening you to make this statement? No. Perfect. Tell me in your own words what happened on September 24th of this year. Margaret took a deep breath and then began to speak. She told everything, the conversations she had heard in August, the tea with the bitter taste, the dizziness, the stares, the push. The lawyer listened in silence, without interrupting. I sat by the window, hands clenched in my lap, trying not to cry. When Margaret finished, the lawyer turned off the recorder. Mrs. Henderson, this statement is sufficient to initiate a criminal investigation, but I need to ask you a very important question. Are you willing to formally press charges against your son? Margaret closed her eyes. Tears ran down her cheeks. He is my only son, Robert, the boy I carried in my womb, whom I nursed, whom I cared for when he had a fever, whom I held when he had nightmares. Her voice broke. But I don't recognize that boy anymore. The man who pushed me down those stairs is not my son. He is a stranger capable of killing for money. She opened her eyes. Yes, Robert, I am willing to report him. At 12 noon, Mr. Thompson and I left the hospital. We took a cab to the police station, district attorney's office. The building was gray, imposing, full of people entering and leaving with folders in hand. We waited for 40 minutes. Finally, they called us. We went into a small office where a detective received us. Good afternoon. How can I help you? Mr. Thompson took the blue notebook, the fake power of attorney, and the recorder with Margaret's statement out of his briefcase. We are here to file a report for attempted murder, forgery of documents, and fraud. The detective frowned. Name of the victim? Margaret Henderson. Name of the alleged perpetrators? Mr. Thompson looked at me. I looked down. Jason Henderson and Emily Miller. The detective began typing on his computer. Relationship to the victim? Jason Henderson is the victim's son. Emily Miller is her daughter-in-law. The detective stopped typing. He looked at us. Are you sure of what you are reporting, ma'am? Completely sure, I replied with a steady voice. The detective nodded. He continued typing. For the next 2 hours, Mr. Thompson presented all the evidence: the notebook, the recorded statement, the forged power of attorney, the emails with the plane tickets. The detective listened to the full recording, read the notebook, examined the power of attorney. "This is serious," he said finally. "Very serious. I'm going to open an investigation file immediately. Where are the alleged perpetrators right now?" "In London, UK. But they return tomorrow, early morning. They arrive at O'Hare Airport at 2:15 a.m. The detective took notes. "I'm going to request an arrest warrant. If the judge authorizes it, we can detain them as soon as they land." "How long does the authorization take?" asked Mr. Thompson. "It depends. If the judge considers there is sufficient evidence, he can authorize it in 24 hours. But I can't guarantee anything." We left the station at 3 p.m. Mr. Thompson walked me to the train station. "Miss Miller, we did our part. Now everything depends on the justice system. Go home, rest, and please do not speak to anyone about this. Especially do not speak with Emily." I nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson. For everything. Don't thank me yet. This is just beginning." That night my cell phone rang. It was Emily. I looked at the screen for several seconds before answering. I took a deep breath. I pressed the green button. "Hi, honey." "Mom, how are you? I miss you so much." "I miss you too." "Mom, I have something to tell you. Jason and I decided to come back early. We realized we can't leave Margaret for so long. We arrive tomorrow early morning." I swallowed hard. "Tomorrow?" "Yes. Our flight arrives at 2 a.m. Can you be at the hospital at 9? We want to see you as soon as we arrive and get settled." "Of course, honey. I'll be there." "Mom, how is Margaret? Has there been any change?" I closed my eyes. "No, honey. She's the same." "Oh, Mom. I hope when we arrive we can talk to the doctors, see what options she has." "What options she has?" The words hit me like a slap. "Yes, honey. We'll talk to the doctors." "I love you, Mom. See you tomorrow." "I love you too." I hung up. I sat on the sofa with the phone in my hand, watching the screen go dark. My daughter had just told me she loved me, and I had lied to her. I had lied to protect her, to protect Margaret, to protect myself. But lies have a price, and tomorrow that price would be collected. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed in the living room watching the wall clock. The hands moved with cruel slowness. 2 a.m. Emily and Jason's plane was landing right now. 3 a.m. They would be collecting their luggage. 4 a.m. They would be arriving at their apartment, and I was still sitting on my sofa with hands clasped, praying for Margaret, praying for my daughter, praying for enough strength to face what was coming. At 6 a.m., my cell phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson. "Miss Miller, good morning. I have news." "What happened?" "The judge authorized the arrest warrant. An hour ago. The police officers are on their way to the airport." I felt my heart stop. "Are they going to arrest them there?" "That is correct. As soon as they exit immigration." "But they already arrived hours ago, Mr. Thompson. They must already be at their home." There was a silence. "Damn it. I'm going to call the detective." "Wait for my call." He hung up. I stood with the phone in my hand, feeling panic rise in my throat. If Emily and Jason were already in the city, and if they discovered there was an arrest warrant against them. My cell phone rang again. This time, it was Emily. "Mom, good morning. We're here. We're exhausted, but happy to be back. See you at 9 at the hospital?" I looked at the clock. It was 6:30 a.m. "Yes, honey. I'll be there." "Perfect. Jason wants to see his mom. He's very worried about her." Worried. The word gave me nausea. "See you in a bit, honey." I hung up. I immediately dialed Mr. Thompson. "Mr. Thompson. Emily just called me. They are going to the hospital at 9. "Perfect. I already spoke with the detective. The police will arrest them at the hospital. Miss Miller, I need you to be there, but keep your distance. Don't get close to them. Let the officers do their job. And Margaret, we need to get her out of that room before they arrive. We can't risk Emily and Jason trying to hurt her. I'm going there right now." I arrived at the hospital at 7:30. I went up to the 3rd floor. I entered Margaret's room. She was awake, her eyes full of fear. "Sarah." "What is happening?" The judge authorized the arrest warrant. The police are going to arrest Jason and Emily at the hospital. At 9, Margaret closed her eyes. My son is going to be arrested. My God, my son. Margaret, Mr. Thompson is on his way. We are going to move you to another room. You can't be here when they arrive. She nodded. At Otta. Noel. Mr. Thompson arrived. He spoke with the hospital director, explained the situation. The director authorized Margaret's transfer to a room on the 4th floor under a fake name. 2 nurses took her in a wheelchair. I followed. Mr. Thompson stayed on the 3rd floor waiting for the police. We settled Margaret into her new room. It was smaller, but more private. From the window, you could see the hospital parking lot. Sarah, stay with me, Margaret asked. I don't want to be alone. I won't leave you, I promised her. I sat next to her bed, took her hand, and we waited. At 9:10, I saw an Uber arrive in the parking lot. Emily and Jason got out. She carried a small suitcase. He had a backpack on his shoulder. I watched them walk toward the hospital entrance. Emily had her hair in a ponytail. Jason had deep circles under his eyes. They looked tired. They looked like a normal couple returning from a trip. But I knew the truth. They're here, I told Margaret. She squeezed my hand. 5 minutes later, my cell phone rang. It was Mr. Thompson. They're here. They went up to the 3rd floor. The police arrived 2 minutes ago. They are waiting for the right moment. What is going to happen? Are they going to arrest them as soon as they enter Margaret's room? Or what they think is Margaret's room? The director put another patient there temporarily. I hung up. Margaret looked at me. And now? Now we wait. 10 minutes passed. 15, 20. And then we heard shouting. It came from the floor below. Raised voices. A woman's voice screaming. Let me go. Let me go. It was Emily. I felt the world crashing down on me. Margaret began to cry silently. I stood paralyzed, listening to my daughter's screams from the floor below. Half an hour later, Mr. Thompson came up to the 4th floor. He entered the room with a somber expression. They took them away. They arrested them in the hallway outside room 305. Emily resisted. Jason tried to run, but the officers detained them. Where did they take them? I asked with a trembling voice. To the police station. They will be arraigned before a judge this afternoon. If the judge determines there is sufficient evidence, they will remain in custody pending trial. Margaret sobbed in the bed. My son, my poor son. The lawyer approached her. Mrs. Henderson, I am very sorry you have to go through this. But you did the right thing. What they tried to do to you is a serious crime, and justice has to act. Margaret nodded through tears. I stood in silence. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. I could only see the image of Emily being arrested. My daughter, my little girl, the child I had carried in my arms, the child I had comforted when she cried, the child I had raised alone after her father's death. At what point had I lost her? That afternoon I went to the police station. I couldn't help it. I needed to see her. They let me into the waiting area. There were families of other detainees, women crying, children asleep on benches, lawyers speaking in low voices on phones. At 5 p.m., they brought Emily out. She was handcuffed, escorted by 2 officers. When she saw me, she stopped. Mom, I approached. The officers let me speak to her, but without touching her. Emily had red eyes, messy hair, wrinkled clothes. Mom, what is happening? Why did they arrest us? We didn't do anything. This is a mistake. I looked her in the eyes, and in that moment, I knew she was still lying, that she wasn't going to confess, that she was going to defend her innocence to the end. Emily, Margaret woke up. Her face went pale. What? She woke up 4 days ago and told me everything. The tea, the stairs, the push, everything. Emily shook her head. No, Mom, that's not true. She's confused. The coma left her confused. We didn't do anything. It was an accident. An accident? I found the power of attorney, Emily, the one Jason forged with Margaret's signature. Her expression changed. I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. Mom, I didn't know. Don't lie to me anymore, Emily. Please, don't lie to me anymore. She looked down. Mom, we had so much debt. The bank was going to take everything. Jason was desperate. I was desperate. And Margaret had so much money and didn't want to help us. What were we supposed to do? I felt rage rising in my chest. What were you supposed to do? Kill her? That was the solution? We weren't going to kill her, Mom. We wanted her to have an accident. Something that looked natural so Jason could inherit and pay the debts. And then everything would go back to normal. I looked at her with disbelief. Do you hear what you are saying, Emily? Do you hear the madness coming out of your mouth? She began to cry. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I made a mistake. But I don't deserve to go to prison. Please help me. Withdraw the report. Talk to Margaret. Convince her not to testify. Please, Mom. I'm your daughter. I looked at her, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize the person in front of me. Yes, you are my daughter. And for that very reason, I am not going to help you escape the consequences of your actions, because helping you now would be destroying you forever. Emily screamed. Mom, no, please. The officers took her by the arms and led her away. She was screaming my name, crying, pleading. I stood in that cold hallway of the station, watching them take my daughter away, and I felt something inside me break forever. I still wonder if I did the right thing. And what would you have done in my place? That night I went back to the hospital. I went up to the 4th floor, entered Margaret's room. She was asleep. I sat next to her bed, and for the first time in days, I cried. I cried for my daughter. I cried for Margaret. I cried for the family that had been destroyed. I cried for the future we would never have. Mr. Thompson had told me the trial could take months, that Emily and Jason faced serious charges, that they could spend years in prison. Years. My daughter would spend years in jail, but the alternative was worse. The alternative was to let her go free, knowing she had attempted to kill an innocent woman, knowing she was capable of that and more. I couldn't save her from the consequences. But maybe, just maybe, I could save her from herself. The days following the arrest were the darkest of my life. Emily and Jason remained in custody. The judge determined there was sufficient evidence to proceed with a criminal trial. The charges were serious: attempted murder in the 1st degree, forgery, and fraud. Mr. Thompson explained that the trial could take between 6 months and a year, maybe more. Margaret was discharged from the hospital on November 15th. 8 weeks after her accident, the doctors were surprised by her recovery. They said it was a miracle she had woken up after so much time in a coma. But I knew it wasn't a miracle, it was will. The will of a woman who refused to die at the hands of those who supposedly loved her. I helped her settle back into her house in Evanston. We cleaned the rooms together, opened the windows to let in the fresh air, threw away the old sheets, bought flowers for the garden. It was as if we were trying to erase the past, to clean the blood that no one else could see. One afternoon, while we were drinking coffee in the kitchen, Margaret said to me, Sarah, I want you to know something. I don't hold a grudge against Emily. I looked at her in surprise. How can you say that? Because holding a grudge would only destroy me. Emily made a terrible mistake, but she was manipulated by Jason. He was the one who planned everything. He was the one who convinced her. I shook my head. Margaret, Emily is an adult. She made her own decisions. You can't blame only Jason. I know. But I also know what it is to love someone so much you lose sight of who you are. I loved Jason's father like that, and I almost lost my identity in that love. Emily lost her way, Sarah, but she can still find it if she serves her time, if she faces the consequences, if she learns, and you are going to forgive her. Margaret looked out the window toward the yard where the flowers were beginning to wither with the November cold. I don't know if I can forgive her now. But maybe someday. Forgiveness isn't for her. It's for me. So I can keep living without this weight in my heart. Her words stayed with me. Because I also carried a weight. The weight of having reported my own daughter. The weight of knowing she was in a cell. The weight of asking myself every night if I had done the right thing. I visited Emily once. Only once. It was November 20th. I requested permission at Cook County Jail where she was being held. They searched me, put me through metal detectors, led me to a visiting room with plastic tables and uncomfortable chairs. I waited 20 minutes, and then they brought her. Emily entered escorted by a guard. Her hair was short. They had cut it upon entry. She wore a beige uniform. She had deep circles under her eyes and had lost weight. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She sat across from me. They didn't let us touch, only talk. Mom. Hello, Emily. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. How are you, honey? She laughed, a bitter laugh, without joy. How do you think I am, Mom? I'm in jail. I sleep on a bunk bed with a stranger. I eat food that has no taste. I shower with cold water. And all the damn time, I think about how I got here. You got here because of your decisions, Emily. She looked down. I know. Do you really know? She nodded. Yes, Mom, I know. And I hate myself for it. I hate myself for what I did. I hate myself for what I tried to do. I hate myself for disappointing you. Her tears fell onto the table. But at the same time, Mom, at the same time, I'm angry with you. Because you reported me. You put me here. I felt a stab in my chest. I didn't put you here, Emily. Your actions put you here. But you were the one who filed the report. You were the one who believed Margaret instead of believing me. I'm your daughter, Mom. Aren't mothers supposed to protect their children? I looked her in the eyes. Protecting doesn't mean covering up. Protecting doesn't mean allowing you to commit a crime and go unpunished. Protecting you, in this case, meant stopping you before it was too late, before you killed someone. Emily wiped her tears. Margaret didn't die because she woke up. But if she hadn't woken up, you would be facing charges for murder, not attempted murder. Do you understand the difference? She didn't answer. Emily, I love you. I will always love you. You are my daughter. But I cannot approve of what you did, and I cannot get you out of here. You have to face the consequences. You have to serve your time. And when you get out, if you decide to rebuild your life, I will be there to help you. But not before. Emily sobbed. I don't know if I can forgive you, Mom. I know, honey. And that's okay. Maybe someday you can, or maybe not. But I did what I had to do as a mother, as a woman, as a human being. I stood up. Take care of yourself, Emily. And please reflect. Reflect on who you want to be when you get out of here. I left that visiting room without looking back, and when I got to my car, I cried for an hour. December arrived with an unexpected chill. Chicago dressed itself in Christmas lights, the streets filled with shoppers on the Magnificent Mile. Families began preparing for the holidays, but I didn't feel like celebrating. Margaret invited me to spend Christmas Eve at her house. At first, I hesitated. Spending Christmas with the woman whose son and my daughter had tried to kill seemed strange. But I accepted because we were alone, the two of us alone in the middle of a city full of people. On the night of December 24th, I arrived at her house with a bottle of sparkling cider and a fruitcake. Margaret had prepared ham, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. The table was set with white tablecloths and red napkins. We ate in silence. A comfortable silence. We didn't need to fill every moment with words. After dinner, we sat in the living room. Margaret had put up a small nativity scene in the corner. The porcelain figures shone under the candlelight. Sarah, can I tell you something? Asked Margaret. Of course. Thank you. Thank you for saving my life. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be. You don't have to thank me, Margaret. Yes, I do. Because you risked your relationship with your daughter to do the right thing. That isn't easy. That requires a courage very few people have. I wiped a tear away. I don't feel brave, Margaret. I feel broken. I know. I feel broken too. But broken things can be repaired. Maybe they won't be the same as before, but they can work again. They can have a purpose again. She took my hand. You and I are going to get through this, Sarah. I don't know how long it will take us, but we will get through it. I nodded. And what about Jason and Emily? Margaret looked toward the nativity, toward the figure of baby Jesus in the manger. They will get through it too. But first, they have to cross their own desert, their own dark night, and we cannot walk that path for them. Do you think we can ever be a family again? I don't know. Maybe we won't be the family we were, but maybe we can be something different, something more honest, something more real. That night, when I returned to my apartment, I found a letter under my door. It was from Emily. I opened it with trembling hands. Mom, it's been 6 weeks since I was arrested. 6 weeks in which I've had a lot of time to think. At first, I was angry with you. Very angry. I thought you had betrayed me, that you had chosen Margaret over me. But this week, a psychologist came to give a talk at the detention center. She spoke about responsibility, about how it is easier to blame others than to accept our mistakes, and while I listened to her, I realized something. You didn't betray me. I betrayed myself. I betrayed the values you taught me. I betrayed the person I could have been. I still don't know if I can forgive you, but I am starting to understand why you did what you did. I love you, Mom. Even though I'm angry, even though I'm confused, even though I don't know what's going to happen to us. I love you, Emily. I folded the letter. I kept it in my nightstand drawer along with the photographs of when Emily was a child. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something resembling hope. It wasn't much, just a spark, small, fragile, but it was enough to keep going. New Year's arrived without fanfare. Margaret and I spent it together, drinking coffee in her kitchen, watching through the window as neighbors launched fireworks into the sky. At midnight, we toasted with cider. "To a better year," said Margaret. "To a better year," I repeated. But we both knew that better didn't mean easy. The trial began in January 2025. The first hearing was January 14th. Margaret and I arrived at the courthouse at 9 a.m. The building was gray, imposing, with narrow corridors and courtrooms full of people waiting their turn. Mr. Thompson met us at the entrance. "Ladies, good morning. Today is the arraignment. The judge is going to hear the charges and the pleas from both sides. You don't have to testify today, just be present." We entered the courtroom. It was small, with wooden benches and a podium where the judge would preside. On one side were the lawyers' tables, on the other, the holding area. That's where they brought Emily and Jason. It was the first time I saw them together since the arrest. Jason had aged. He had gray hairs he didn't have before. The skin on his face was pale, gaunt. Emily still had short hair. She wore the same beige uniform. She didn't look at us when she entered. The judge entered. We all stood up. The hearing lasted 2 hours. The prosecution presented the charges. Jason's defense attorney argued there was no concrete proof, that everything was circumstantial, that Margaret's statement could be contaminated by the trauma of the coma. Emily's lawyer, for her part, argued that she had been manipulated by Jason, that she was a victim of psychological coercion, that her participation was minimal. When the hearing ended, the judge set a date for the next one, February 12th, 6 weeks later. We left the courthouse in silence. Margaret was pale, trembling. "I can't believe Jason is still denying everything," she said. "After everything, after the evidence, after my testimony, he keeps denying it." "It's the only thing he has left, Margaret. If he admits his guilt, he will spend many years in prison." "But it's the truth, Sarah. The truth matters. For us, yes. For him, not anymore." The weeks that followed were a strange mix of routine and anguish. I continued working part-time as a nurse at a private clinic. Margaret began seeing a therapist to process the trauma. She also started writing. She bought a new notebook and began noting down her thoughts, her fears, her hopes. "It's therapeutic," she told me one afternoon. "Writing helps me get out everything I carry inside." One night, while we were having dinner at my apartment, Margaret asked me, "Sarah, have you thought about what you're going to do when the trial ends? With your life? With your future? Are you going to keep living in this apartment? Are you going to keep working at the clinic?" I thought about it. I don't know. I've never thought beyond the trial. It's as if my life were on pause. "Mine too," admitted Margaret, "but we can't live like this forever. We can't let what Jason and Emily did define the rest of our lives." She was right. But I didn't know how to start building a future when the past was still so present. The second hearing was February 12th. This time, Margaret had to testify. She took the stand with trembling hands. Mr. Thompson guided her with clear, direct questions. "Mrs. Henderson, can you tell us in your own words what happened on the 24th of September, 2024? Margaret took a deep breath and then told everything. The tea, the dizziness, the stairs, the push. When she mentioned the push, her voice broke. I felt my son's hands on my back. And then I fell. Jason's defense attorney stood up. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness was in a coma for 6 weeks. Her memories could be distorted." The judge looked at the lawyer. "Objection overruled. The witness is stating what she remembers. The jury will decide if her testimony is credible." Jason's defense attorney continued with the cross-examination. "Mrs. Henderson, is it true that you refused to lend money to your son when he asked for it?" Yes. And is it true that your son had significant debts? Yes. Is it not possible that your son was desperate? That his mental state was affected by financial stress? Margaret looked directly at him. My son wasn't crazy, counselor. He was greedy. There is a difference. Murmurs filled the room. Emily's defense attorney also did his cross-examination. He tried to demonstrate that Emily had been manipulated, that she hadn't planned anything, that she had only obeyed Jason out of fear. But Margaret was firm. Emily is an adult. She is a lawyer. She knows what is right and what isn't. She made her own decisions. In March, Mr. Thompson informed us there was a new development in the case. Jason had decided to negotiate with the district attorney's office. He was willing to confess in exchange for a reduced sentence. What does that mean? Asked Margaret. It means if Jason agrees to plead guilty, he can negotiate a sentence of 12 years instead of 20, and if he gives information about the planning of the crime, it could be reduced even more. And Emily? Emily is still negotiating separately. Her lawyer is arguing that she deserves a lesser sentence because she was an accomplice, not the mastermind. Margaret closed her eyes. 12 years. 20 years. It doesn't matter how many years they give him. I already lost my son. The son I knew died the day he decided to kill me. In April, Jason finally confessed. In a private hearing before the judge and prosecutors, he admitted having planned his mother's accident. He admitted having forged the power of attorney. He admitted having convinced Emily to help him. The sentence was handed down on the 20th of April 2025. Jason, 14 years in prison. Emily, 8 years in prison. When I heard the sentence, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because justice had been served. Sadness because my daughter would spend the next 8 years in jail. 8 years. When she got out, she would be 40. I would be 67. Could we rebuild our relationship after that? I didn't know. But justice didn't come only from the courts. It also came from life itself. In May, Mr. Thompson informed us that Margaret's properties in Lincoln Park had been secured. No one could touch them. No one could sell them. They were legally protected. Margaret decided to donate the rental income from those properties to an association helping women victims of domestic violence. I don't want that money, she told me. That money almost cost me my life. I prefer it serves to help other women. She also decided to sell the house in Evanston. Too many painful memories. She bought a small condo in the Gold Coast. 2 bedrooms, a living room with a large window, a bright kitchen. From the window, you could see a park full of maple trees. I'm going to start over here, she told me the day she signed the contract. No ghosts, no fears, just me. I helped her move. We painted the walls white, bought new furniture, hung paintings with peaceful landscapes. And one afternoon, while we were drinking coffee in her new living room, Margaret told me something I will never forget. You know what's ironic, Sarah? Jason wanted my money. He wanted my properties. He wanted my inheritance. And now that he's finally going to inherit, he won't be able to enjoy it because he'll be in prison. She paused. Life always collects its debts. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes you think the bad guys get away with it. But in the end, life always collects. She was right. Because one day in June, I received a call from the correctional facility where Emily was. Miss Miller, your daughter had an incident. Nothing serious, but she wants to speak with you. I went the next day. Emily had been moved to the infirmary. She had a bandaged arm and a bruise on her cheek. What happened? I asked her. I got into a fight with a cellmate, over something stupid, over a bar of soap. She laughed bitterly. This is my life now, Mom. Fights over soap, over a spot in the lunch line, over a piece of shade in the yard. I sat next to her bed. Emily, are you okay? She didn't answer immediately. She stared at the ceiling. No, Mom, I'm not okay. I'm alone. Jason doesn't speak to me anymore. He says everything is my fault. That if I hadn't insisted so much that we needed money, he never would have done what he did. And what do you think? I think we are both guilty. But it's easier to blame me. She wiped away tears. Mom, you were right. I should have faced the debts another way. I should have asked for help. I should have been honest. But I chose the easy way. And now I'm paying the price. I took her hand. You still have time, Emily. 8 years is a lot, but it's also an opportunity to reflect, to change, to become the person you always wanted to be. She nodded. Are you going to keep visiting me? Yes, honey. I'm going to keep visiting you. Even if I'm angry with you sometimes. Even if you're angry with me sometimes. We stayed in silence. A silence that this time didn't hurt as much. 14 months have passed since that morning in November 2024 when Margaret opened her eyes and whispered, "Call the police before they come back." 14 months that changed my life forever. Today is January 2025, and I am sitting in Margaret's new condo drinking coffee as the afternoon sun streams through the large window. From here we can see the park. Children play on the swings. Couples walk holding hands. Life goes on, and so do we. Margaret turned 69 last month. We organized a small celebration in her apartment, just the two of us, Mr. Thompson and his wife, and two friends Margaret made in her therapy group. We blew out the candles on a cake, toasted with white wine, laughed. It was strange, beautiful, and strange because a year ago Margaret was in a hospital fighting for her life, and now she was here, surrounded by people who loved her, celebrating another year. "Do you know what I wished for when I blew out the candles?" she asked me when we were alone. "What?" I wished for peace, not happiness, not justice, just peace. For me, for Jason, for Emily, for all of us. I wiped away a tear. "That is a beautiful wish, Margaret. It's the only wish that makes sense at this stage of life, Sarah, because happiness comes and goes. Justice is served, or it isn't. But peace is something we build ourselves from the inside. I visit Emily every 2 weeks. It's not easy. Every visit costs me. It hurts to see her there in that beige uniform in that cold room full of other women who also made mistakes. But I go because I am her mother, and because despite everything, I still love her." In December, Emily told me she had started working in the prison library. She organizes books, helps other inmates find reading material, reads at night. "I'm reading a lot, Mom," she told me. "Novels, essays, biographies. It's as if I were discovering a part of myself I had forgotten." "What are you reading now?" "A book about women who changed their lives after hitting rock bottom. It's inspiring and painful because I see myself reflected in some of those stories." I asked her if she had seen Jason. She told me no, that he had requested they be transferred to different facilities, that he didn't want to see her, that he blamed her for everything. "And do you blame him?" I asked. She stood thinking. "At first, yes, I blamed him. I thought he had manipulated me, that I had just been a victim. But the truth, Mom, is that we were both guilty. He planned, I accepted, and we both executed." She paused. "I think that's the hardest thing to accept. That I wasn't a victim. I was an accomplice, and I have to live with that." I was moved by her honesty. Because for months, Emily had denied her responsibility. She had blamed Jason, blamed the circumstances, blamed desperation. But now, finally, she was accepting the truth. "Mom, do you think someday Margaret can forgive me?" she asked. "I don't know, honey. That depends on her, and it also depends on you, on the person you become when you get out of here. I have 6.5 more years to become someone better. I hope it's enough. It will be enough if you decide it is." Margaret and I have become very close. We have dinner together 2 or 3 times a week. We go to the movies. We walk through the park. We talk about everything and nothing. One day, while we were strolling under the maple trees, Margaret said to me, "Sarah, there is something I want to do, and I need your opinion." "Tell me." "I want to write a book about what happened to me, about how I survived, about how I found the strength to report my own son." I stopped. "A book?" "Yes. I think my story can help other women, women who are being mistreated by their families, women who are afraid to speak up, women who think they are alone. Margaret, that is beautiful. But it will also be painful to relive everything. I know. But I think it's necessary. Because if my pain can avoid someone else's pain, it will have been worth it." I told her I thought it was a brave idea and that I would support her in whatever she needed. Margaret began writing in February. Every afternoon she sat at her desk with a cup of tea and her notebook and wrote for 2 hours. Sometimes she read me fragments, stories from her childhood, memories of her husband, anecdotes from when Jason was a boy. "I want people to know that Jason wasn't always like this," she told me. "That there was a time he was a good boy, loving, innocent. Because that makes everything more tragic and more human. In March, Margaret received a letter. It was from Jason. She opened it with trembling hands. She read in silence. When she finished, she passed me the letter. Mom, I don't know if you are going to read this letter. I don't know if you want to hear from me. But I need to write to you. It has been 5 months since the sentencing. 5 months in which I have had a lot of time to think, to regret, to hate myself. I am not going to ask for forgiveness because I know I don't deserve it. I know what I did is unforgivable. I tried to kill you. I tried to steal your life for money. And there are no words that can erase that. But I want you to know something. I miss you. I miss the mother who raised me. I miss the afternoons in the kitchen. I miss your voice when you read me stories as a child. I miss the person I was before becoming this. I don't know if someday you will be able to forgive me. But if this time in prison has taught me anything, it is that forgiveness isn't for me, it's for you, so that you can keep living without this weight. I love you, Mom, even though I have no right to tell you. Jason, Margaret cried silently. Are you going to answer him? I asked. She shook her head. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. I need more time. I need to be sure I can answer him without resentment, without pain, without false hopes. I hugged her. You have all the time in the world, Margaret. 2 weeks ago, I had a conversation with Emily that stayed with me. We were in the visiting room. She told me she had started taking psychology classes in the prison, a distance learning program. I want to understand, Mom. I want to understand how I came to make the decisions I made. I want to understand the greed, the fear, the desperation. Because if I don't understand it, I'm going to repeat the same mistakes when I get out of here. I think that's very good, honey. That shows maturity. She smiled, a small but real smile. Mom, there is something I want to tell you, and I want you to listen to the end. I'm listening. Thank you. Thank you for not saving me. Thank you for doing the right thing, even though it hurt you. Thank you for loving me enough to let me face the consequences of my actions. Her voice cracked. Because if you had saved me, if you had covered for me, if you had gotten me out of this, I never would have learned. I never would have changed. I would have become someone worse, and you knew that. That's why you did what you did. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I love you too, Mom. And someday, when I get out of here, I'm going to prove to you that your sacrifice was worth it. I took her hand, and in that moment, I knew my daughter wasn't lost. She was finding herself. Today, sitting in this bright apartment drinking coffee with Margaret, I think about everything we have lived through. I think about that November morning, about Margaret's words, about the blue notebook, about the forged power of attorney, about the trial, the tears, the rage, the fear, and I think about what we have gained. Not perfect justice, because justice is never perfect. Not complete healing, because wounds so deep never heal completely. But we have gained something more valuable. Wisdom. The wisdom to know that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. The wisdom to know that loving doesn't mean protecting from consequences. The wisdom to know that forgiveness is a long road and shouldn't be rushed. The wisdom to know that we are stronger than we thought. Thank you for listening to me until the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and hit the notification bell to hear more stories of women who transformed their pain into wisdom. Every day, a woman. A life lesson. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes a story like this can change an entire day. God bless you, and until next time.